Hello everyone and welcome into my latest live broadcast. Today it is Friday, February the 24th, 2023. My name is Kerry Holzman and today I've got another unique mini PC that we're going to look at today that just takes it a whole different direction, kind of a out of the box thinking here that initially when I saw the specs on this machine, I was not too impressed. But then when I combined the number of tests that I've run on it with the price, it's actually a really good idea what they've done here. So we're going to talk about that today. And in this box right here is one of these that the folks at AceMagician have sent to me to give away to one of you today. Of course, you must be in the United States and you must have not received anything from the channel before. So we give everybody in our community a chance to win something, to receive something from the channel. So we'll get back to giving this away a little later on in today's broadcast, but you must be here live today to be eligible to be the recipient, the lucky recipient of the AceMagician CK10 that I'm going to go over with you today. Now first, well, most content and most publishers are always focused on the latest, newest thing. It's pretty rare that we ever go back and talk about something that we were excited about a couple of years ago, but haven't talked about since it's been, like in this example, this is a 10th generation Intel chip. So when the 11th generation came out, ooh, let's talk about the new chip. And then the 12th generation came out and it's, ooh, let's talk about the new chip. And the 13th generation, which to some extent is still coming out, at least in the laptop form, it's all the marketing, all the money is spent to draw media attention to the current product, which of course is always going to be the most expensive version of product. So in that family of product. So what happens if you go back just 2 or 3 generations, which isn't that long ago? What sort of financial savings is there? And what real practical difference does it make with performance? And that's really the penultimate question here, is when push comes to shove, when everything is said and done, what are we left with between a 10th gen and a 13th gen besides the known financial discrepancy between the two? The newest one always being the best choice. Everybody wants the fastest. But here's the thing. Most of you probably are running a computer that's over 5 years old. In fact, just as a off-the-cuff survey of our live chat room, how many of you in the chat room right now are running a computer that is 5 or more years old? And the reason I'm asking this question is I see a lot of people being extraordinarily judgmental towards getting a little bit of extra gigahertz, a little extra bandwidth, a little extra storage, faster RAM. And yet it seems the majority of these people that are being so persnickety about every little teeny tiny tidbit of performance gain are themselves running a machine that is well out of date and would benefit. They themselves, those people making those statements online, those comments and videos, would benefit from just having a more modern PC, regardless if it, peaked out all of the specifications. When you're used to using a computer for, if you've had the same computer for 5 or more years, anything new put in front of you is likely going to seem amazingly fast to you by comparison. It's sort of like if you take a starving person and ask them to review your food, everything's going to taste delicious, right? But at the same time, if you're describing the food to the starving person and the starving person starts telling you how you could make the food better in theory, they don't have the food, they're starving, you're describing something and they're like, well, you need to add some seasoning and you need to trust me. Those very people that are making those suggestions for improvement would be nothing but thankful and have lots of gratitude for the most delicious meal they ever had which could be literally anything when you're starving. So you don't always need to have the latest and greatest. And that's ultimately what I'm getting to, especially if you're not somebody who's constantly upgrading every year or two, but you're having your computer last for several years because you're not made of money. You're like most of us. And furthermore, you probably don't need all of that performance. You probably aren't going to use it. So why spend the money? Why chase after this constantly moving target of what's the best? Because what's the best as far as like what's fastest is always the most expensive, and it's always being replaced. So one day AMD's faster, one day Intel's faster, one day this video card, one day that video card, one day it's DDR3, then it's DDR4, then there's DDR5. It never ends. So at some point you've got to ask yourself, what's good enough for me? And what can I afford? What's a reasonable amount of money to spend? So for most of us, and I truly believe most of us, we don't need that 13th gen chip. We don't even need that 12th gen Intel chip. We can go back a couple generations, which again, isn't that long ago. If you were in high school when the 10th gen chip came out, you're still in high school, right? If you were a freshman, you'd be what, maybe a junior at this point? Maybe. So it's not that much time that's passed. It's not like you're buying a relic. So for people to turn their noses up at it like it's not good enough, but in the meantime, they themselves are running a machine that perhaps when it was new was fantastic, but now 5+ years later, anything modern will be an improvement to them, a noticeable performance enhancement. And people talk about RAM a lot. Oh, 32 gigs of RAM, 64 gigs of RAM. The thing you need to know about RAM is all RAM can do for you is make your computer more responsive, and only under the condition that you're actually needing that much RAM. So if you're putting in way more RAM than you're ever really using, you've just wasted your money. And if you're using more RAM than you have, that's okay, because Windows will utilize your storage as virtual RAM, virtual memory. I'm sure you've heard the term virtual memory. Now that's going to be slower than actual memory, but it's not like your computer is going to crash for running out of memory. When we add more memory, it is always an option. Always, as far as I can tell, there is never a scenario where someone must have a certain amount of RAM above, let's say, 8 gigs. I would say for the price of RAM, 16 gigs should be the minimum, just for everything to run responsively, right? For when you're clicking on something, you get that sensation of instantaneous or near instantaneous response. 16 gigs on Windows 10, Windows 11, it's pretty much all most people need. Now, you may not be most people, and if so, you don't need to listen to anything I'm saying because you already know all the answers for you. I'm not here to debate you on what's right for you. I'm here to help the people who don't know what's right for them, and they don't know what any of this stuff means. So with this machine, and the reason I bring up the RAM is soldered onto the board. And I know so many of you, your instant reaction to that is you're so turned off by that. Your nose goes up in the air and you're like, oh, it's not good enough for me. But by doing that, they're bringing the cost way, way down. And the machine is going to run every application that, even if you could upgrade the RAM, doesn't change anything but the performance of it. When we talk about performance, it's all about how much money you want to spend. So performance isn't something that's earned. Performance is something you reach out and you buy it. And it's kind of an unfair system in that way, that you might be a great person who could really use the performance, but you cannot afford it. Whereas somebody else might be flush with cash and they can spend the money and not even miss it. And they can have all the RAM they want and have a computer that's very responsive, and they're the least likely to actually need it in many cases. That's just the way the world goes around. So at what point does something become good enough? And by good enough, I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean it in a smart, economical way. At what point am I being a fool, wasting my money for something I'm not going to use strictly so I can feel good about it? Like, you choose how you're going to feel about something. It is not the result of the computer. It's a result of your mindset. You may choose to be grateful, and you may choose to be satisfied. You may also choose not to be satisfied. You may choose that things aren't good enough. But these are all choices we make. They are not something beyond our control that we are burdened with. So, to be practical, where's a good price point to spend on a computer for average use by most people who own computers that will do, it should be able to do everything you want it to do outside of gaming? This is not a gaming PC, so I wouldn't expect it to game. Gaming is expensive. If you want a game, that is a luxury. That is something people with money can use to indulge themselves in mindless entertainment to whittle away their precious time here on Earth. And if that's how they want to squander their precious time on Earth, have fun. I'm all about and support gaming, but not when it's all somebody does all day, every day. So, you know, one of the things you realize when you get older is time kind of compresses. So when you look back on time, it seems much shorter than when you're in the moment. And to have any sort of regret that, oh, I wish I would have done more while I was able, because as we get older, we often have health issues that can result from anything from arthritis to other diseases that were once young and healthy. Now, things we used to do without thinking about it, like tying our shoes, suddenly becomes a bit more effort. And to have a fully able-bodied, young, healthy person just sitting on the couch all day, just playing video games, yeah, I just think what a waste. Great as a recreation, as a distraction for a little while, absolutely all for it. But for that reason, I wouldn't dump $5,000 or $6,000 into something I'm only using maybe an hour a day or a couple hours a week, because any more than that, you know, I don't know. It's even if it's temporary. If you're doing it, you're gaming every day during your teenage years. The problem is stopping. It almost becomes like a habit, and it can be a very difficult habit to break. And especially as you go from teenager into adulthood, and you're expected to get a full-time job, move out, live on your own. That makes that transition harder, because all you can think about is your mind's still fixated on that gaming addiction, for lack of a better word. So again, I am not anti-gaming whatsoever. I got into this field to play games. Games wouldn't run on the computer. I had to figure out why and fix them. There was no internet, and there wasn't somebody I could just call. I had to figure it out on my own. And that's led me to computer repair and led into a career. So the reason I mention all of this is to preface the upcoming review for this mini PC. The mini PCs are becoming more and more affordable, whereas before, the mini PCs used to cost more than an equivalent desktop because of the proprietary nature of how they had to make everything really tiny, and the engineering and custom parts involved, just like a laptop. But unlike a laptop, they don't have a screen, they don't have a keyboard or a mouse, they don't have a battery. But other than that, you've essentially got like a miniaturized desktop that has very limited upgrade possibilities because it's meant to be replaced. So with that in mind, let me show you what this looks like. So unlike the past where I've taken these, unboxed these mini PCs live for the very first time on camera, I went ahead and I had some time this week and I familiarized myself with this and did all the updates so we don't have to go through any of that time-consuming stuff here on this live video, and instead we can just dive right in. So I've already gone through the finalization of the Windows setup, all the Windows updates. All that's been done. I've even taken this apart, so I have determined whether or not it's a good idea for me to take it apart on camera. And it is. It's actually very simple. And so we will take this apart on camera. We'll get the close-up camera out. And I'll show you how it's built. And I just want to set your expectations properly, because I think if you have your expectations reasonable, like I'm going to tell you, I think this is going to make you very happy for, I can't see any reason why this couldn't last you for the next 8 years, honestly. It's essentially an 8-year build at half the price. And instead of upgrading it, you'll simply replace it. And at the end of the day, it'll probably be cheaper, and you'll end up with 2 computers, because just because you're replacing this doesn't mean you can't pass it on to somebody else. Doesn't mean it's not useful to somebody else. So not only is it saving you money, but it enables you to be a multi-computer household over time, rather than just having one computer you keep sinking money in over and over and over again. Transmitter guy in the chat says, I tried to buy one of these. The checkout is really clunky and the coupon showed up but didn't subtract off the total. I backed out. So the folks at AceMagician reached out to me and they asked me if I'd review this, and I said yes. And you know, the last Ace, what was the Camrui, which I think is the same company. I have a link to Amazon for that. Now, if you go to Amazon and you search for the CK10, there is a Camrui version of this, but I don't see an AceMagician version of this. And the AceMagician website definitely is, like for me personally, I would rather buy from Amazon, because I know if there's a problem, it's painless returns, easy returns. I can't speak to how AceMagician's going to be if you buy direct from them. I really don't know. So I'm not recommending that that you buy this machine from either place, quite frankly. I'm just really here to give you an idea of how the machine is built, and where you source the machine, if you choose to buy it, is entirely up to you. But I'm just putting food for thought out there that you might, if you're looking for that peace of mind, if you are concerned that there might be some reason that you don't trust one retailer or website, go to a site you trust. Absolutely. Doesn't hurt my feelings none, because that's what I would do. Now, AceMagician, they've been around since the early 2000s. They're not a fly-by-night company, but that doesn't necessarily mean they have good customer service. I really don't know. I'm having some difficulty getting this box out of there. Now, ideally, you won't need to talk to customer service, but I just don't know how responsive they are. I don't know. I think if you buy it directly from them, they extend the warranty to a 3-year warranty, which you don't get unless you buy from them. But I don't know how they honor the warranty process. So I just don't have the information. So therefore, I'm not advising you to do it, and I'm not advising you not to do it. I simply don't know. Now, if you have an experience with them and you'd like to share it with us, good or bad, I'd certainly love to hear your feedback on the matter. Because when I'm showcasing computers here, I don't want to mislead or give attention to a company that I feel isn't treating my viewers with respect. So I have a complete open mind with regards to the folks over at AceMagician, or I would not be showcasing their computer. I also have worked with other AceMagician mini PCs in the past, and they're all still working today, so I haven't had any reason myself to contact customer service, and I just don't know what that experience is like. So if you've had an experience, positive or negative, I'd love to hear back from you regarding that, and hopefully AceMagician has good customer service, and hopefully you don't need to use it. I mean, that's kind of the way I'm looking at it. Nick Poverman provides me a link to Amazon. He said there's an AceMagician version of this at Amazon. Oh, interesting. They're not calling it the CK10, are they? Huh. It's listed there at $468.69. There's a $40 coupon. Here, I can just share this. Let me share this with you guys. We'll look at it together. I found the Camrui version, and I'm not quite sure what the relationship between Camrui and AceMagician is, but clearly there's some relationship there. Okay, so here is the AceMagician. So here's the specifications. It's an Intel i7 10th generation. It's the 810U. It's 16 gigs of RAM. It is soldered onto the board. There are no RAM sockets. You cannot upgrade the RAM. It's got a 512 gig M.2 drive, which is SATA. And from my testing, it's only SATA. It doesn't seem to support NVMe, and it's got a second M.2 slot as well, also SATA only, according to my testing. It comes with Windows 11 Pro. It'll support 4K video output, Wi-Fi 5. It is not Wi-Fi 6 or Wi-Fi 6E or Wi-Fi 7, which I don't know is out yet. Bluetooth version is currently 5.3, but again, you're buying something that's a couple of years old with regards to the technology they're using, so it's only 4.2. It has 2 HDMI outs. It's got a gigabit LAN port, USB 3.0. You can run up to 3 monitors on this, 2 HDMI and 1 VGA, all at the same time. And you're looking at, at this price here, $428. So that might seem like a bit much when you compare the N95 mini PC that we reviewed for half that price. But this is more than twice the power, processing power. So let's take a closer look at this. Let me go back to my OBS. Oh, wait, let me just take a look at these pictures that they've posted here. Let's see what we have. The English language grammar is pretty interesting and usually is a tell sign that you're dealing with a company that is typically out of China, where English is not the first language. So I don't see that as a good thing or a bad thing. It's just a thing that kind of stands out to me and sets my expectations with regards to what the documentation may be like if I need to see the documentation. And you sort of have to interpret their interpretation of English in many cases, but it's not terrible. All right, so let me go back over to camera 1. Thank you for the link, Nick. Thomas Robinson contributed £3. Right on, thanks, Thomas. Peter Laycock with £10. There's our good friend Buster. Hey, Buster. Hope you're doing well today. Mark Gaines joining us from the UK contributes £10. Russell Starr has been a member now for 9 months. Right on, Russell. Thanks for supporting the channel, being part of our tech club, as well as Find Me in Hawaii, also a member for 9 months. Find Me in Hawaii, his name is Ken. Ken says, hello, Carrie and Nutty. Hello, Ken. Thank you for staying a member of our tech club. Right on. You guys rock. All right, let me just move the box aside here so we have some room to work. In this box right here, we've got our power adapter. We've got a power cable. We've got a short HDMI cable, and that's if you wanted to mount this on the back of your monitor. You don't need a 6-foot HDMI cable hanging down and looping back up again. So other than that, I don't know why you would need a cable that short. Also in the box, we have a SATA adapter because On the bottom side of this, when we take this off, there's two rails that are part of the bottom that will hold a 2.5-inch SATA hard drive or solid state drive. And you'll plug this into the back of the drive, and this plugs into the motherboard. It's not installed by default because it just adds clutter. So it's there as an option if you want to add more storage that way. But you also have a spare M.2 slot you can use. This is the VESA mounting bracket, and that's again for mounting it against the back of a monitor, or I suppose you could hang it on the wall if you wanted to. We've got a little bag of screws here, and this appears to be, well, there'll be 4 screws for adding a 2.5-inch drive. What these bigger brass screws are for, I'm not sure. And that's it, and that's all that's in the bag. In the box, rather. So I won't use any of this, quite frankly. If I was going to add storage, I'd add M.2 storage. Or just simply upgrade the M.2 storage it's got now, which is 512 gigs. You know, you can put a 2 terabyte in there, SATA. Or if you've got a spare 2.5-inch drive laying around, you want to recycle it and use it, this will take it. So we'll fire this up, see how it runs, and then we'll open it up and see what makes it run. Thomas Backenstow joins us in the chat, says hello, as does Captain Linsky. Right on. Hey, guys. I know I asked that earlier question. How many of you are running a PC that's 5 or more years old? Let me go back and see what the comment said. John Williams says, good afternoon from a chilled Madison, Wisconsin, where we're at 20 degrees Fahrenheit. Yeah, that sounds a little chilly. Channel Zero wants to know if anyone knows if this computer is available to buy in Australia. I have no idea. Mortant says, I received the 200R build from the channel. It's still running great. That's awesome. Love to hear that. So yeah, I'm starting to see a lot of you running machines that are right at 5 years old. Eric Lopez says he's running a Surface Pro 3 for over 10 years. Holy cow, I didn't think the Surface has been around that long. Nick Poverman said his computer's 3 years old, no need to upgrade. Dustin Fuller says his computer is also 3 years old. Rob Dvorak says his computer's 4 years old. Mark Gaines says he's got 2 that are 7 years old. Al Hejtapaj says, I use an i3-4160 on Windows 10, works okay for me. Well, 4th generation Intel's got to be about 8 years old. Maybe 9. John Williams says he built his computer last year, built his wife a computer just before Christmas. Right on. Matt Zolov says, Carrie, I saved a 12-year-old PC this week. The hard drive was almost alive. It was almost alive. That's a positive way to look at it. Dave Price says 3 gigs and 3 gigahertz and 32 gigs of RAM and a decent video card. Yeah, well, and a decent amount of money will go with that. Doman 2000 said, many older PCs here in use. I've got an i7-2600 watching the stream. Wow. 2600, that's old. 2nd generation Intel chip. Paul Garrett says his 9900 KS and Z390 still rock. Yeah, mine too. That's what the streamer is. And according to OBS, I'm using 1.1% of my CPU's available power to live stream. So obviously a 9900 KS is still no slouch by today's software requirements. Mostly speaking. There's always exceptions, but those exceptions are not in use by many people compared to more ubiquitous applications that are clearly nowhere near as resource intensive. Patrick Gursaw said, I went from an i7-3770 to a 6700 and then to a 9700K, and the only difference I noticed is the boot time. Nothing really changed in the way I use the PC that was noticeable to him. Yeah, and you know, that's an honest answer. I think a lot of people aren't necessarily, I don't want to say that they're not honest, but they tend to exaggerate a bit, or they're blown away by his benchmark numbers. But the reality of using the PC really doesn't feel all that much different for most people, other than noise levels, and of course, how big of a gap you're going from one generation to the next. So the likelihood when you go from, say, a third generation and you upgrade to a fifth generation, probably not that much of a difference. And when you upgrade from the fifth generation to the eighth, probably not that much difference. But if you skip that middle and you went from the third generation right to the eighth, you would definitely notice a difference. And not just in boot time, but just in overall performance, responsiveness. But if you're doing the upgrades a bit every year, it definitely, for most people, doesn't really feel like it was a wise investment, that you're really noticing enough of a performance difference to make it worth what you just spent to get there. So be aware of that. It's a very common reaction people have based on setting false expectations from other content creators that will tell you how wonderful and amazing this latest chip is because, you know, it scored 2 points higher on a benchmark, and instead of 2,200 is, I'm just making a number up, some ridiculous number. The score is 10,200, but this is our new leader, which scored 10,202. Oh yeah, that 2 additional points out of 10,200, real noticeable. But yes, many content creators get awfully excited, little tiny gains like that. I'm just scrolling through the chat and see what I've missed here. William wants to know why this mini PC has a VGA port. Why not? There's still a lot of VGA monitors out there. This is not a bleeding edge, top of the line machine. So why expect some high performance bleeding edge machine after I just got done telling you this is a couple generations behind? And many people running computers right now watching this stream are more than just a couple generations behind. How many of you out there, for example, still have a VGA connection on your monitor? And how many of you are using it? I think you'll be quite surprised. But if you always want the latest and greatest, obviously you're not going to find a VGA port on an RTX 4090. But for the cost of that RTX 4090, you could buy 4 or 5 of these. So it depends on where your priorities are and how much money you have. I see Ron Barnish has joined us, and Richard Cullen, and Rick Lakes. Yeah, Mark Gaines says he's still using VGA. Thing One says he's got DVI and VGA on 2 older screens. Flipper Flop says he uses VGA. Bob R says he uses VGA. Doman 2000 says, I like VGA to make my MAME emulation picture a little softer. Interesting idea. Yeah, so the point that I'm trying to make is, you know, there's this sort of mindset that's very common in online with regards to the tech arena, where people are very elitist. They sort of exhibit elitist and snobbish attitudes when they don't necessarily have the justification or the finances to back up what they're being so persnickety about. For the vast majority of people, what this machine represents is probably better than what they're using right now at a fraction of what they paid for it whenever they bought it, and at a fraction of the physical amount of space it's going to take up. It's very small. And I wouldn't turn my nose up to it because, quite frankly, it's a very capable machine for everything other than gaming. Now, I wouldn't necessarily want to do video editing on this, but I could. It would just take quite a bit longer to process the video files. But depending on if I'm editing 4K video files, the number of transitions, overlays, and the length of the video will obviously make a big difference. A shorter video, if I'm editing a 10-second video, this isn't going to render that much slower than this machine over here. Because if this machine can do it in 4 seconds and this machine can do it in 30 seconds, it's still quick. So everything has a... You can choose to look at things in a very negative way by painting pictures of extreme tasks. But then the question I have for you is, how often do you do that? Now, I don't care how you spend your money. If you want to drop $729 on just a CPU, a Core i7-10900KS is currently $729 for the chip. That does not include anything, not even a cooler. If you have the money for that, and that's what floats your boat, have at it. But my friend, you do not represent the majority of the population. Most people cannot afford that, and many people who can wouldn't, because that's how they're able to have that much money to have left over. It's because they're not just spending on everything that's the latest and greatest. It's a good way to keep you poor unless you were already pretty well off. If you want to stay well off, you got to hold on to it. So, you know, I'm not suggesting this PC is right for any of you in particular. This is for you to decide on your own. All I'm trying to do is offer you another way to look at it. And ultimately, at what really matters. When you sit down and use your computer, what is the thing that bothers you about your computer the most? Is it the noise? Is it lack of responsiveness? Is it just ugly and you don't like it? And how much would it be worth to you to fix that? Because a lot of people think to fix it, I got to spend $1,500, $1,800, $2,000 because they're seeing these extravagant, over-the-top enthusiast builds on YouTube that are just ridiculous. And they're always using, for the most part, they're always using the latest and greatest components. It must be nice to have that kind of a budget available to you to just spend willy-nilly on computer parts. And then what do you do with it? Once you've built it and you've satisfied this desire, how are you going to use it now that you have it? And it's just sad when somebody goes through that drive and that passion to acquire something, and then once they've acquired it, it just kind of sits. And they're using it for very minor things that a machine 1/3 or 1/4 of the price would just do equally well. So that's what this is. Let me get it powered up here, and let me show you what it looks like, how fast it boots, how quiet it is. And then let's take it apart. So first of all, I'm going to plug in the power adapter, and we'll give it the plug there. Give it the plug. And then I've got an Ethernet cable. Even though this has wireless, I've not configured it on the wireless here. We've got our two HDMI ports here, two USB 3s here. Our VGA out is here. On the front, we've got a USB-C connector, two more USB 3s. We have an audio jack, or this will be like for a headset, where you could just plug in speakers or plug in a headset with a microphone and one jack right there. We've got a power button. There does not appear to be a hard drive activity light on here, which is bizarre. I know on some models that AceMagician sells, this little cutout right here becomes like a fingerprint reader, but there is no fingerprint reader, so that's just a design, doesn't do anything. Just there for aesthetics. So let's see, I gotta plug a monitor in, so let me grab an HDMI cable. And then I need a keyboard and a mouse, and then we can turn this thing on. All right, so what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna switch over to Nick Poverman just contributed $5 with an Amazon link, who says this is a version of this computer on Amazon for $399. Yeah, it's very puzzling to me. That's a good find, Nick. It's very interesting. It says it's from AceMagician. It looks like all the specs are the same. Oh, it shows it's 15% off the regular $469 price. So it's on an Amazon deal right now. That's a temporary price. Very good find. Let me share that screen with everybody so they can see it. I will put a link in my video notes to this page, because if you guys buy this without using one of my links, I won't make the commission. And I mean, that's fine. You're not obligated, but it is a nice thing for you to do since it doesn't change your price at all. So I will generate a link for this and add it to the video notes, to the video description below the video once we're done here today. Nice find, Nick. Thank you again. All right, so back over to camera 1, and I'm also going to turn on HDMI input 1, which is the audio, the video output of this box, and then I'll put myself in a corner here. Okay, got that done. Let me switch back over to the chat room, and I'm going to turn this machine on, and we'll see how fast it boots. You ready? Here we go. So there is a little light on the front, well, on the power button, embedded in the power button that shows it's powered up, because I can't hear anything. It's dead silent. And before I can even finish this sentence, it looks like we're already booted right up to our Windows desktop from a complete cold start. And you know it's a cold start because well, machines might go into a sleep mode. It certainly can't if you've got the power disconnected. So you saw me plug the power in, you saw that's how long it took for it to boot up on a cold start. I think that's pretty impressive. Now here's the other thing. I ran Prime 95 on this for an hour, and I saved the results. I think I have the results. Let's see. Right here. And if we look at these results, you'll see it. When I took the screenshot, we were 57 minutes. And 52 seconds of Prime 95 running. And the temperature, its current temperature when I did the screenshot was at 62 degrees Celsius. It was at 48 before I started the test. And the hottest the CPU ever got in that 57 minutes was 68 degrees Celsius. It never went above 68. That's insane. Now, performance-wise, it's running, it'll slow down to like 700, 800 megahertz when it's idle. It sits somewhere between 1.7 gigahertz to about 3.3. It was pretty close to 3.3 on the maximum. And of course, that's what's helping keep the fan quiet. And at no point did the machine ever crash on me. At no point was there any hesitation. While Prime 95 was running, I was also streaming content off of my Synology to play an X265 encoded video, which requires quite a bit of processing power to decode. All you need is an old computer to run VLC on and decode try to watch an X265 encoded file and realize just how much processing power that takes. Well, this made it all look super easy. And I was very impressed with these numbers. Now, with that being said, I also have realistic expectations because at a $400 price point or even a $470 price point, you'd be hard pressed to find a decent graphics card for that price. But again, gaming is an expensive luxury. We're using onboard video with this computer using the Intel, the Iris graphics or something like that they call it. If we go to the specs here, we'll go to the properties, and we can see the processor is the i7-10810U, which they've got sitting between 1.1 and 1.6 gigahertz. 16 gigs of RAM. It's using 0.1 gig of the RAM for the video card, the built-in video, built into the CPU. It includes Windows 11 Pro, which in and of itself, if you were to subtract the cost of that from the cost of this computer, makes the price of this computer even more attractive. Now, the storage is SATA, and it appears to only support SATA. But, for most people, and I talked about this before, when you're going from a mechanical drive to a solid state drive, everybody always notices how much better their computer seems to perform. But when you go from SATA to NVMe, most people can't tell the difference. The computer's still mostly going to boot in pretty much the same amount of time, and most applications are going to load pretty much the same amount of time. So unless you have some extreme software, unless you use your computer for an extreme task, I would assume you're getting paid well for that, and therefore the money's no problem to drop for, some Gen 5 PCIe NVMe that can run 10,000, 12,000 megabytes a second. If you can afford it and you find that to be a reasonable thing to invest in, I'm not suggesting you shouldn't. I am suggesting to people who aren't technically savvy that the difference in performance under most use case scenarios, the way most home users use their computers, and in fact, in my line of work, the way most employees use their computers, which is they do stuff online with various websites and research. They have to send bills. They have to go into things like QuickBooks or Quicken for their accounting. They need email, and some of them are using Gmail right through the web interface, while others have an email program like Outlook. They run Microsoft Office. They need a network share that they can save and load files company-wide, so anybody in the company can access those files. They absolutely do not need a high-end graphics card. Many of them are running 2 monitors these days, and this can run up to 3, no problems. And I'm trying to think what else the vast majority of my clients all have in common. Generally speaking, I found that the people that have this high demands tend to want to do things themselves. They tend to be more of on the control side. So I think that's why I don't get a lot of customers like that. I do get them, but they're nowhere near as frequent as just your standard everyday computer owner. Let me go back to the chat room here and see if you guys have any questions about anything about this little PC that I haven't talked about yet, or if you want me to run a test on it before I shut it down and take it apart. Captain Ken says AceMagician store is still in holiday mode. Interesting. Channel Zero says no optical drive. Yeah, well, you can go on Amazon and you can buy a USB, DVD, CD, Blu-ray, and just plug it into the USB port. And then that way, anytime you need it, you've got it available. But when you don't need it, you can remove it and have less clutter. You could even buy a USB floppy drive. I think they still make them, if that's still something you're using. John Paul Bacon said, I'm curious that M.2 would only be SATA. If that's the case, then I probably wouldn't buy the system. Yeah, well, again, it really depends on each individual, but with my customers, they've not been able to tell the difference when I've upgraded their drives from SATA to NVMe. They've not noticed it whatsoever. I think a lot of that is psychological, but it just really depends on how you use your machine. Expect to pay more to get more. The RAM, not only is the RAM soldered on, but it's DDR3. It is not DDR4. I thought that was kind of interesting. I wasn't aware you could make DDR3 compatible with a 10th gen Intel. But in no way, this doesn't seem to cripple this machine at all, except mentally to the end user. It's like, you know what it's like? You give somebody something to eat and you ask them, do you like it? And they say, oh, this is delicious. What is it? And then you tell them and they're like, oh, I don't want that anymore. It's as though the information that's been given has poisoned their actual experience. And for me, it's supposed to be, in my world, it's supposed to be the other way around. I don't care what the specs say. I care, how does the machine run? Is it responsive? Does it do what I need it to do? And do I think that is a good price for that in return? Instead, especially in the online community regarding computers, there is this absolute obsession of number chasing and nothing about what the computer feels like to use. So you might have a top-of-the-line computer that you've paid $2,500 for that you're completely happy with, and then a year later something new comes out and you buy another $2,500 computer that has all higher numbers, higher CPU numbers, higher data transfer speed numbers, but then you sit down to use it, and if you let a third party watch you use your computer, in all likelihood the third party is going to say, it's still taking you the same amount of time to do those things you're doing because you're the slow point. You're the part of the computer that's the slowest. However, as I mentioned, there are exceptions where people have extreme tasks that they run on the machine and that they run frequently enough to justify that added expense to get those added speeds. But they're few and far between. And those people are typically enthusiasts. So you're going to see more of those kind of people online than standard users because the enthusiasts tend to be more vocal, even though there's just a little teeny tiny amount of them in comparison to computer owners worldwide. They're a very small but loud minority, and it could convince you that they're representing computer owners. But the number of computer owners the enthusiasts represent is one of the tiniest minorities of computer owners overall. So I would not let their attitudes and opinions sway you unless you too are an enthusiast. Otherwise, the information the enthusiasts are offering is typically money is no object, performance is all that matters, and it doesn't really matter what they use the computer for. It's about achieving numbers. I just don't know, in my line of work, I don't have any customers that are chasing numbers. They're always looking at what's a good, reliable, quiet machine that we can afford. What's the best deal I can get to get what I need, not what's the best thing I can buy at any price. Don't get me wrong, I would love to have customers like that. I wouldn't need to have very many, and I could be making a very good living. But this is a decision for each of us to decide using our own justifications. So I'm here trying to represent the average computer owner. I'm trying to give folks a practical, thoughtful solution to something they feel may be out of their reach. In other words, they might say, I can't afford a new computer right now. If what you're looking at are all these enthusiast review videos on YouTube, I agree, you probably can't. But if what you want is a very, very good computer that's way better than what you have now, it's cheaper than you think. And it's absolutely, you're going to be 100% happy with it. In fact, if you buy the computer, like this computer here, from Amazon, and you don't like it for any reason, you have 30 days to return it to Amazon free of cost for a full refund or credit. So you have peace of mind, so you can see for yourself that just because it's a couple generations behind, just because it's got SATA M.2, just because it's got DDR3, the reaction, and certainly my reaction was, this thing is old. It's going to be slow. It isn't. And it's one of the quietest PCs, one of the lightest. It's hard to believe there's anything in here. It's so light. And I can't speak for how reliable it'll be over time, but I can't see why this computer isn't going to be a good 8-year build for somebody. And when I say an 8-year build, I mean, I could foresee somebody buying this computer today and still having it 8 years from now, and it's still running everything just fine, still being secure and compatible with Windows, the latest version of Windows, as a minimum 8 years. So unless you spill something on it, or you drop it, you abuse it, maybe there's a power spike that occurs that's, not in your control. Because it's all solid state, it seems to me that its useful life should be the same as an 8-year build, but at half the price. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty excited at this concept. Putting these older parts in that are far, far cheaper is giving you much, much more value for the dollar. I think it's worth considering. Our friend Buster says, good night, everyone. It's time for bed. I've been up since 2:30 in the morning. I'll catch up with you all tomorrow. Hey, Buster, thanks for hanging out with us today, and we'll look forward to seeing you again soon. And thank you for all of your support and your kindness. John Paul Bacon said he looked on Amazon and the M.2 was a combo socket, NVMe and SATA. Well, I did take the machine apart and I did try both sockets with an NVMe drive. And in both cases, it did not recognize the drive. So unless the drive I've got is bad and it's a brand new drive, it appears that this model that and remember, they have multiple models that all look alike. And that's another little tricky part with Camrui and AceMagician having even the same model numbers of CK10. On the other hand, maybe there's something in the BIOS I'm missing that I have to turn on, but I didn't see anything about NVMe in the BIOS at all. But it may be an oversight on my part because I thought that was pretty weird. But on the other hand, it doesn't really seem to matter because if you put a regular SATA M.2 in and you put an NVMe drive in, apart from running benchmarks, most of you will not be able to see any performance difference whatsoever. You're just saving milliseconds in most data transfers. So unless you're doing an unusually high number of data transfers, it may add up to a couple more seconds one way or the other. For me personally, I move a lot of data to my NAS. It doesn't matter how fast my NVMe drive is when my bottleneck is my network. My gigabit network is going to move data about 130 megabytes per second. I mean, a mechanical hard drive can keep up with that. So unless I'm moving data from one NVMe to another NVMe internally within the same computer, there's no benefit to it. My videos don't render any faster on NVMe, at least not using Cyberlink Power Director. When I load DaVinci Resolve, it doesn't matter if I'm loading it off SATA or I'm loading it off NVMe. It just seems to take forever to load either way. So I don't know what it's doing and how much it's during the loading process, what it's putting on the CPU. But I can tell you, I've never seen DaVinci Resolve load quickly under any configuration. So if that's something important to you and you want to have those bigger numbers, regardless of the practicality of having it, or maybe you have a legitimate reason to spend that extra money, don't let me get in your way. But I also want to make sure that the regular folks watching don't get poisoned with information that somehow this isn't enough. It is, for most people, undetectable. If this had DDR4 or DDR3 or DDR5, it makes no difference. The amount of time savings is milliseconds, literally milliseconds, under the vast majority of computing tasks in the way most people use their computers. And for the people, once again, that use their computers in extreme tasks, they're not going to take any advice from me. They already know they want the best of everything because they've convinced themselves that's what they need. And I'm not here to tell them otherwise. I'm just trying to offer the average user an alternative perspective that's likely more practical and more affordable, that doesn't necessarily have any consequences in the way the enthusiasts would have you believe. But ultimately, you have to decide this on your own. And I'm offering it up for consideration because, again, my initial instinctive response to seeing the specs on this was, ugh. But now that I've got it and I've been using it, it's really good. At that $400 price point, it's a really good deal. Using this as a home theater PC, using this as a PC for the kids, something you don't want to put a lot of money into, but you want it to be reliable and you don't want it to have to be replaced in 2 years because it'll be obsolete. This is something I think most people should consider because you could buy 2 or 3 of these for the price of one enthusiast build and probably still have cash back. All right, so looking back just to see if there's any other questions here. William Dawson said, what is wrong with the face? The RAM is soldered on the motherboard. Apple does it, has done it for years, and people love Apple. So long as it works, does the DDR number matter? Well, so long as it works well, right? So long as it's responsive, it's quick. Yeah, getting into the under the hood of the engineering of it, again, most end users don't know what any of those numbers mean. They only know if the machine is loud, if it's quiet, if it's annoying, if it's ugly, if it's slow. That's how users describe their computing experience. They don't describe it in megabytes per second or megabits per second. Never has a customer ever, a real customer, ever had that concern. That's, I get emails from viewers on stuff like that. It's really super granular stuff that at the end of the day, what difference does it make? What's the problem you're trying to solve, right? That's always the question I'm leading into when someone's saying, how come I'm only getting so many megabits per second? How come my 3200 megahertz RAM is only running at 2933? Well, what's the problem you have? Is something running slow? Is something crashing? What are we trying to do here? Well, I paid for 3200 megahertz RAM, so I want to get 3200 megahertz RAM. Yeah, I don't, that's a complete waste of time for me. Talk to the retailer, talk to the person you bought it from, send it back. I can't be bothered with it. I mean, I'm trying to help people solve real problems, and that's not a problem, not in my eyes. But see, Dave Price says he rips music. Yeah, I don't know why anybody would rip music anymore. I have a very large CD collection. I've got probably 200, 250 music CDs, and I don't know what to do with them. I don't know the last time I've taken a CD out of its jewel case, but everything I want is on Spotify. And if it's not on Spotify, it's usually on YouTube. And instead of me having to rip it and me having to store it, let them store it for me. Let YouTube store it on their servers. Let Spotify store it on their servers.
Amazon Music.
Or Amazon Music. There's a lot of options out there for music, and it just goes with you wherever you are without the burden of having to load it. It makes life so much easier and far less expensive than, geez, I remember when I originally ripped my CD collection, it was 128 kilobits per second. And then it became practical to rip at 320, which meant I had to re-rip 200 CDs all over again. And then the files were so big, then it became about a variable bit rate where we can, depending on what the needs of the music or the song is, it can vary the bit rate to higher densities depending on the complexity of that moment of the song. And that made for a much more reasonable file size, which became an issue because I would put all these MP3s onto a flash drive, put the flash drive into the car's radio player, and then have my own music with me. But I don't do that anymore. With a smartphone, I turn on Bluetooth and I just play my music through Spotify. If I hear a song on the radio and I like it, I hit Shazam so it can hear the song, tell me the name of the artist, and with the push of a button, adds it to my Spotify library. It's done. I used to have to make notes, go to Tower Records and start looking for the song, try and figure out what the name of the song is or who the artist is. I've ripped my CDs, I think, a total of 3 times, and it is a major, major task with all the labeling and categorization and folders within folders to keep it all organized. Oh, I'm so glad those days are behind me.
Awesome Mix Volume 1.
What's that?
Awesome Mix Volume 1.
Awesome Mix Volume 1, Guardians of the Galaxy. I used to make mixtapes. Yeah, for sure. I love doing that. But now, I don't know, it just all seems old-fashioned to me. Feels like, why would anybody still do that today? I don't think any young people do that. I think that is the behavior of somebody older. Not, I'm not.
You calling us old?
I'm not. It's not meant as an insult. It's an observation, something to be aware of. Tubester says he still loves his vinyl. Yes, because that's what we all want to hear in our music is. I like to hear that in the background of every song.
Does he still have a record player?
No, he just loves vinyl. He didn't say anything about records. Ryan in Canada with a $2 super chat contribution says, I like 80s music. 80s music's the best. Bring on Depeche Mode. Matthew Burton says, I prefer to own my music, not rent it. It's, you're renting it. I assure you, you don't really own anything because when you die, you won't be taking that with you. It will be left behind. So this own versus rent when it comes to media is strictly a state of mind. But hey, I'm not telling you you're wrong. Just saying you have chosen voluntarily to have a perspective to justify your reasoning. And that's all I'm doing, but I'm doing it in what I feel is a more practical way, a way that makes life less complicated. Like I said, I've got over 200 CDs. I don't know what to do with them. They take up quite a bit of space. Depeche Mode is on tour, says Kevin in the chat. Yeah, I just saw them on Stephen Colbert last night. Bob R says, what happened to rock? It's still rock and roll out there. It's just changed, right? It's evolved. It's become, you know, our choice for what we have to listen to for music now with the internet and people being able to just publish their own songs. You no longer need permission or approval from a music producer. You can put your own stuff out there. And in a way, it's sad because it was something for us to bond over. Like in the 1980s as a teenager, there were just a handful of genres of music. And so it was something we could share an experience together over a popular song. But these days, there's so many different categories that there could be multiple popular songs happening at the same time. And artists that are extremely well known that many of us have never heard of before because it's been so compartmentalized in so many different categories. So I remember they had Jack Harlow on Saturday Night Live a couple months ago. Who the heck is Jack Harlow? Yeah, nothing like feeling old when this guy's getting swarmed with people and I'm like, why? Oh, he's a singer? And then I listen to him sing? No, he's not. I don't get it. Not my generation. Definitely not rock. But there is still rock music being made, for sure. John Williams said he had a customer come to him because he wanted a DVD optical drive installed in his desktop PC. No problem. Sure. I offer that to my clients if they want that. I don't think most people want it, but I do ask when I'm doing a consult if they need Wi-Fi, if they need Bluetooth, if they need a DVD or CD drive, because that determines which case I'm going to use to build their machine in, to make sure it's going to meet their needs. My clients have mostly gone to USB drives now. It's just a lot easier to grab a USB drive, plug it in, and use that. Even if it's a USB DVD drive, it's just a lot easier. Planet Cryos with a $20 super chat says, hello, Carrie. I'm in the gym working out and I'm listening, so don't talk about me. How did you know? Thank you, Planet Cryos. Now, give me 10. So Steve Mercure says, I have an external USB DVD optical drive that's bigger than the PC you're reviewing. All right, any other questions about the mini PC before I shut it down and take it apart? We'll put Camera Girl to work for the close-ups on it as well. Brian says, when I'm dead and buried, I'm taking my cell phone with me, just in case. Oh, you may not be. If they don't put it in the box with you, you may not have it. You're going to take some leap of faith that it's going with you.
Ghostbusters.
Patrick Russo says I should take my CDs to a record store that buys CDs. Well, that's the problem. Like, we have a place here called Zia Records. And yes, they will buy your used vinyl and CDs, but they'll give you like $2 cash for each CD or a $3 credit towards an in-store purchase for other music you want to buy. And I don't want to buy any more music. Everything I want is on Spotify. I think there are 2 or 3 songs that are not on Spotify that I want to listen to. And so what I've done is I have MP3s of those, and I can add them to my Spotify library on my PC, and then it synchronizes those onto my phone. And I have to like revisit it every 4 or 6 weeks, or the songs become unavailable again, which is kind of a pain in the butt. But you know, 99.7% of the music I want is on Spotify. There's just a handful. Like, there's 3 songs I can think of in the entire library of music that I love since I was a child in the 70s. It's mostly all on Spotify. So Bob R. said, a smartphone is a computer with a phone app. That's what I say. Yeah, agreed. What is the bit rate of Spotify? It's variable based on what your bandwidth is. Spotify has a high definition, what do they call it? I forget what they call it. But they have a higher bandwidth demanding version, assuming your cell phone plan allows you to have that much bandwidth being consumed. I can't remember what they call it, but it's basically like high definition audio. Now, me personally, the regular Spotify, the way it sounds, I think it sounds fantastic. Again, just as there are the tech enthusiasts, there are audiophiles that are very sensitive to how their music sounds. And these are the people that, in general, if you're ever dealing with a customer, if you provide a service to a customer, and that customer is going to micromanage you and be that demanding, unless you are charging that customer 2 to 3 times more because they're being 2 to 3 times more demanding than others, those are generally customers I avoid because they're very difficult to please and it can be exhausting. People like that generally should probably do things themselves because nobody will ever do it good enough for them. And if you were, it wouldn't be worth what you're charging. You'd have to charge them more. So, we're all allowed to have our preferences, but McDonald's may not be the best restaurant to go to if you're somebody that wants to know every little detail about how is the meal prepared and what are the ingredients in use and how much of this and how much of that. It's a fast food place. Get in, get out. It's not there to cater to your every whim. It's just get your food cheaply, quickly, and move on to the next customer. So there are places that are far more expensive that will cater to your every whim if that's what you want. There are restaurants you can go to where you can tell them what you want them to cook versus looking at a menu. You could say, I don't want anything on your menu. Here's what I want. I want this and I want this and I want that. And they'll go in the back and they'll make it for you happily. And you will pay a princely sum for that. And for those people, it's worth it. But for the rest of us, for the vast majority of us, something like that might be considered a special night out, a treat, not just an everyday, I'm demanding, kind of a thing. That if you can afford to have people meet all of your whims, I'm jealous because I've always had to learn to sacrifice and to be reasonable and be practical. Otherwise, I would be with nothing. That's the way it would end up in my world. You can either have it this way or you could not have it at all. Which do you prefer? So that's how I was raised. I think about people that can just go and have everybody meet every whim and demand that they have. And I'm not sure if I would like it, but I'd sure like to give it a shot. Verusian Kalustian with a $2 super chat says, I'm late to the show. I heard something about record stores. Right up my alley. Nice. Dave Price says, do the browser test launch Google, then launch Edge. I think I have Google Chrome on here. Let's do that. Let's do that. So, okay, there's the mouse. We'll bring up Google Chrome. It's obviously a cached page. We could go to YouTube, if I could spell it right. It's just as responsive as this 9900KS, right? The bottleneck here is going to be the internet. And then we can bring up Microsoft Edge, which we have down here. Almost instantaneous. Go to YouTube. Yeah, I mean, anything faster than that is going to be measuring milliseconds. So I'm not quite sure what anybody would have to complain about in that regard. Let me go ahead and shut this down and let's open it up and take a look at its guts. Let me show you how simple this thing is. It's genius in its simplicity. It's like everything you need and nothing you don't. Just cut away all the fat and you'll end up with this. So I'm going to start by unplugging everything from the back here. Just like so, and we'll remove the wireless keyboard and mouse dongle, and I'm going to move all that just to the side. And then we'll go to the close-up camera. So we'll put Camera Girl to work. You ready?
Ready.
Okay, close-up camera, activate. You're good, come on over. All right, here's the machine. Don't look at me, look at the machine. So again, I thought it's a little weird that there's no hard drive activity light. And there is a reset, but it's recessed. It's way deep in there. I guess there's a letter R just above it. And then on this side, nothing. On this back, we've got the two USB 3s, the two HDMIs, the gigabit Ethernet port, and the power plug. And continuing around, there's our VGA plug, which is optional if you want to use it. And then we're back to the front again. Now, before I open this up, let me tell you what's in here. The top is the bottom in the sense that, you see these little holes here? These are giving air to the fan that's on the CPU. So the CPU is right here at the top. But the way we're going to get to it, we have to turn it over. And I like that the rubber feet do not cover the screws. So it's just this easy to open up. 4 small screws. And there's no pull tab or anything like the B-Links had, so you just kind of have to find a corner here and lift this out, or just tip it. Just like that. Now, on the bottom here, you'll see it's got a space for a 2.5-inch SATA drive to go in here, and that's what some of the spare screws are for. So you put the screws into the sides. It's just molded plastic, and it is vented. Now, looking down inside, it's pretty nice. They put a heat sink on this 512 gig SATA M.2 SSD. Also, the SSD itself has a power light and an activity LED that blinks on and off, but the computer case doesn't, which is weird because you can't see it when the lid's on it. This is our Wi-Fi card right here. And, oh, yeah, and then here's our second M.2 slot right there. So that, if we put another M.2 drive in there, it'll go over this little ribbon cable. This whole little assembly here is just for the VGA port. So if we take this out, essentially what we do to take this apart, and I can't see any reason why you would ever want to do this because there's really nothing serviceable on the other side. But just to show you, those 2 screws hold the board down. And the rest of what's holding the board down, so far as I can tell, is this bracket. There's a long bracket right here that goes this way, and then the VGA plug mounts onto that bracket, and the bracket mounts onto the board, which secures also that side of the board down to the case. So we have to take out these 2 screws. This one here, they're super, super tiny, by the way, if you take a look at that. Look how small that screw is. And then there's another one right here. And what that does is that removes, or rather unsecures, just the little VGA header right there. And then you've got this, you can see the support bracket a lot easier now. You've got 2 additional screws here for the support bracket. And these are also a different size screw than all the others. They're much longer. So we want to be very aware of where each screw is coming out of, because there's a significant length difference here between the bracket, the VGA, and then just the back panel. So we're going to keep the screws separated for that reason. Now if we look into the case here, this little bracket now comes out, and just pay particular attention to what direction that goes in so we don't put it in backwards. It's kind of easy to tell given that we know that VGA plug is going to screw down. So these parts, the holes have to be facing up, obviously, or it won't sit in there right. But I will intentionally set this piece on the counter in the direction it came out so that I don't have to think about it. Now, I think that's all that's holding this in. I should be able to just pull it away from the edge of the case. And you'll notice, you see it's kind of bowing right there because it kind of locks into position once it's seated down. So I'm just grabbing the M.2 drive and lifting up on this to see if I can see what's catching it. And that's it. Then the whole piece comes out, and I just want to be real careful that I don't want to pull the antenna wires off of the Wi-Fi like I've done before. And then that's the inside. And here's our whole system. There's our cooler. There's our CMOS battery. Here's our soldered on RAM right over here. So there's really nothing you would ever need to get to this side for. Maybe to change the CMOS battery, but that would probably be 6 or more years down the road before that needs to be done. And there you go. Take a good close-up scan of that, if you would. Not much to it. And the benefit of that is, means there's not much to break. That should be very reliable. And Brian Lightfoot said it has no RGB. That's another good. Yeah, if you want to add RGB, you could probably add $100, $150 to the price for that nonsense, because that's a major profit item. Is that a laptop fan? Yeah, those are most frequently the types of fans, CPU cooling fans, that are found in laptops. Absolutely. Almost every mini PC ever made, going all the way back to that Intel NUC I worked on in 2013, have been using this. Nothing new or unique about that. That's just part of getting the footprint smaller. Is as you would a laptop, you would have a very similar cooling solution as a laptop. The Smash Network says it's a shame you can't add more RAM. I disagree. The fact that you can't add more RAM is what's helping bring the cost of this down to make it more affordable. If you're somebody who is of that personality, then you can afford to spend more for that necessity. If you need to have that, you have to understand that it costs more money to buy the little sockets, the RAM sockets that have to go on. And of course, you have to engineer for that to make sure that you have room for them, that they're not getting in the way of anything. And then you potentially run into BIOS updates with compatibility resolutions over different types of RAM. All of those potentials for failure have been removed. So this is a great solution for people who, and again, I'm talking about the majority of computer owners. They're going to buy the computer, take it out of the box, and start using it. This is not a do-it-yourself kit. This is ready to go out of the box, plug it in, use it. You should never need to take the cover off of it. Most people never will. And if you're going to do so, probably the only reason you're going to do that is to upgrade the storage. But again, the vast majority of average users, they're not using more than 200 gigs of their storage. I've seen plenty of customers with laptops that have D drives, and the D drives are completely empty, and the customer has never had any idea that that was there or why. So again, for the average ordinary individual out there, a computer like this saves you money. It's more, it's less likely to have any issues because there's less you can do to it. So if there's less you can do to it, there's less that can go wrong. If you understand that psychology, then you will understand where the benefit of a machine design like this falls. So it may not be ideal for any particular person. It is ideal for most when we talk about the average computer owner. When you're looking at the price point, you're looking at how much you're getting for the money. Most people don't upgrade their computers. The people that are going to the store and buying pre-builts pretty much keep them the way they are. Ask me how I know. I've been in this business for over 30 years. And for people to upgrade their drives or upgrade their RAM, It's just not very common. It's typically reserved for enthusiasts or people that have decided to take on a hobby. But for everybody that's using a computer as a tool, they're using that computer to go online, to pay bills, to stay in touch with family and friends. They're using it for entertainment. That's represents the vast majority of computer owners never, ever upgrade their machines. So if you're not going to upgrade it anyway, why are you paying for all the sockets? If it's only going to get plugged in once, you can save that added socket cost by just soldering it right onto the board. And cost universally amongst most computer owners is their first and foremost concern, not performance and not storage, not even warranty. When customers are at Best Buy or they're shopping for a computer, 9 out of 10 of them, probably 99 out of 100 of them, want to know, how can I get this cheaper? And that is, it always comes with a consequence. It's sort of like the car salesman that says, oh yeah, we have a version of this car that's $10,000 less, but it doesn't come with any tires. It's useless. And then they'll nickel and dime you and build everything up, and now the car's twice the price. This is far more honest than that. This isn't trying to be something that it's not. It's very practical, it's very affordable, and what it presents is I believe it's just honest. It's not boastful. It's a tool. It's meant to be an affordable and reliable tool that should meet the needs of the vast majority of computer owners. And for anybody else, they can open their wallet and customize their build. This isn't for them, that's all. So because the vast majority of computer owners are who I'm trying to appeal to, I think it's important to showcase stuff like this that most YouTube enthusiast channels are going to snub their nose at, when the reality is you would be more likely, if you worked at Best Buy and you sold computers and you had this model available next to enthusiast models, I guarantee you at the end of the week, week after week, consistently, you would sell more of these than you would of the enthusiast models. And you would also make more money off the enthusiast models. You won't make much money off of these, so you make it up by selling in quantity. Let me look around you here. What's the chat room saying here? Even if you wanted to build something like this yourself, price out a 10th gen i7 CPU, motherboard, heatsink, RAM, 512 gig of SATA storage, a case, and a power supply, along with Windows 11 Pro. Let me know what price you come up with. And it won't be this small. We're talking about a regular standard build here. I would suspect you're going to be right around $700 or $800 for the exact same specifications, except you would have DDR4 RAM and not DDR3. But again, that wouldn't really make any processing difference for the vast majority of computing tasks. Check 1, 2. Well, that's a weird thing that just happened. Somehow my audio source in OBS changed to one of the other cameras. Maybe there's a hotkey for that. I thought my batteries died, which is weird because I always charge up my batteries before every show. So I don't know how long I was without audio, but that's pretty strange. But thank you for letting me know in the chat room. All right, so does anybody have any questions about the mini PC or the board? Oh, we're on the camera mic. Oh, yeah, it's the wrong audio source. Bear with me for a second here. Let me switch over temporarily to camera 2. And camera 2's input is what? Number 2. Well, that makes sense. Let me switch my audio source to input 2. Test 1, 2. Check 1, 2. Hopefully that should be back to normal. What a bizarre experience that was. Very strange. Yeah, it's a live show. What can you do? Again, I appreciate the feedback. Thank you for letting me know. All right, so any questions about the mini PC that I can answer? Any concerns? Anything, any anxiety I can help alleviate? Patrick said, I hit the keyboard. Yeah, I'm sure I must have hit the keyboard, but I just don't know what hotkey changes the audio source. That's very strange. I'll just have to be more careful. I'm sure it just didn't happen on its own. I'm sure I inadvertently pressed a button. Story of my life. Ron Barnish says he missed more than 5 minutes. Well, we were on the close-up camera, and it was just me going on about price being the #1 concern for most shoppers shopping for a new PC. And this is who this is aimed at. This is for people looking for the best bang for the buck, not looking for the most expensive thing and not looking for the fastest bleeding edge, latest thing. This is what the vast majority of people shopping for a computer are looking for with regards to getting the most they can get for the least amount of expense. And this checks those boxes without being useless. It's not like one of these computers that has the eMMC memory. If you see those really super cheap $100 little mini PCs and they say they're eMMC, run away. Those things are dog slow. Does it get hot? No, it does not get hot. I ran Prime 95 on it for over an hour. When I took the screenshot that I showed earlier, at 57 minutes of running Prime 95, the hottest it ever got was 68 degrees Celsius. It never exceeded that. Ryan contributes $2 in Super Chat. He says, here's for you and Camera Girl. Right on. Thank you for supporting the channel, Ryan. Dave Price said the tiny PC would make a great media center PC. I concur. It absolutely would. In fact, I'd say it's overkill. You could probably go with like an N95, like that Camrui PC that's in the $200 ballpark, and it would make a great media center PC. This would be way overkill for that application, but it absolutely would do it. Martin says if you want 4K and have HEVC source files, an N95 is not sufficient. That surprises me. I would think it should handle that just fine. When I tested that N95, I did run HEVC or X265 encoded files, not at 4K. So perhaps that's where the difference is, but it did it without breaking a sweat, like it was no big deal. But I don't normally run 4K content anyway. But again, I'd say if you're demanding, like if you have demands like that, then obviously you should expect to pay more. Most shoppers, when they're buying computers, they don't really have any demands. They just want something typically quieter and faster than what they have now. And that's about the most they can explain it. So it's very hard for them to justify spending more when they really don't understand what they're buying. Like storage space doesn't mean anything to them. The difference between storage and RAM for most people, even after you explain it, they still don't understand, nor do they care. So to tell them why they should double their amount of RAM or double their amount of storage, at some point it's based on faith that they believe you and they do it. But most of them, they get the machine home, they really don't understand what they bought. The question is, when you get it plugged in, and hooked up, and you're using it, is it faster and quieter than what you were replacing? And if it seems a lot faster and a lot quieter, the happier they are with making that purchase. And that's the level of understanding they have, no differently than with a car. A lot of car buyers have no concept of what size engine there is in the car. They don't care. They know it's 4-cylinder or 6-cylinder, but beyond that, what the actual cubic inches or how many liters the engine is doesn't really mean anything to most car owners. They're just buying it because they like the way it looks, they like the price, or they like the gas mileage, or it's electric, whatever the appeal is. It's the car enthusiasts that are the ones that are going to look at all those details, and furthermore, are the ones that are going to spend the big bucks on that level of car that checks all those boxes for those individuals. And the car manufacturers make a lot of money from those people. They don't make a lot of money on the everyday cars people buy. Again, they're making it up in quantity. So it's nice if you have that kind of money that you can be so particular and you can pay for those particular, those desires you have. But the vast majority of us, we just want the best bang for the buck. We don't want to buy something overkill. Most of us don't have, we have other things we want to spend our money on besides the computer. So that's why people are still running computers that are 10 years old. They really don't want to put any money into it. Despite the fact it's so critical and important in their lives, they don't know how they live without it. But that's another debate for another day. It frustrates me when people act like their world is collapsing because their computer's broken, but they don't want to spend any money to replace it with something good. They just want to spend the least to get something, literally anything. And then they just end up spinning around in the same circle over and over and over again as the cheap piece of junk they bought just ends up breaking sooner than buying something decent. Doesn't mean you have to go and get something expensive. But, if a computer is important to you, if your communication or whatever you're using the computer for, it's not a novelty. It's something you rely on day to day. Get something decent. And it doesn't mean you have to spend a lot of money. Ron Toomey says you got to be careful with the leaf blower on that PC. Yeah, you definitely don't want to use a leaf blower on a tiny PC or a laptop. Just use one of these little dusters you can get on Amazon. They're about $50 or $60, and you can just blow them out. And what's nice is you wouldn't even have to open this up. Just blow the air through the vents right there on the top and on the sides. So disassembling this for dusting is not necessary. Ross Bittner in the chat says, right on, Carrie. My first computer I bought pre-built back in the early 2000s because I liked the way it looked. I had no idea what any of the specs meant. Yes, this is the way most people buy computers traditionally. But you wouldn't know that based on information on YouTube and online because it's all made by enthusiasts. And, you know, that ship sailed for them a long time ago. But we were all there. None of us were born with this knowledge. Just some of us really got attracted to it and want to learn all the nitty gritty, the inside and out. And we want to know it at a granular level. And we want to share that enthusiasm with other enthusiasts. But the problem is, well, enthusiasts are the main source of the material that you're seeing online. They aren't the main consumer of that material. Regular, ordinary, average users are. And so if they don't realize the information is excessive and it's over the top, it's exaggerated for everyday, typical, practical use, then it leads regular users to believe falsely that this stuff is important to them. And it isn't. It's important to the person making the content. And maybe it's important to some of the viewers, but the vast majority of viewers fail to understand that these are individual preferences, not requirements in most cases. And that it is not necessary for them to justify spending more money on a computer to meet these requirements that are somebody else's requirements. They're not yours. So I'm trying to help empower people so that they can make better decisions. I can't make the decision for you, but I can give you more information. And the more information you have, the more likely you're going to make the right decision that's right for you, your budget, your needs, your expectations. Let's see how easily this thing goes back together here. Let me see if I can remember how to put it back together. Let's see. Yeah, should we get the close-up camera again? Let me go back to close-up camera. There's the close-up camera source. There you go, come on over. All right, so these are our antennas for the Wi-Fi here. I just want to be careful not to pinch those. And then that's our VGA header right there, which I'll just set just to keep it out of the way. Now this has to go into a bit of an angle. We're going to align the ports here with the holes. So we put in one side first, get the holes to align, and they should kind of extend into the hole a bit. And again, I just want to watch my cables here. I have to bend the plastic back, you can tell. And let's see. We don't want to bend the circuit board, you just want to bend the housing. Oops. Hey, I didn't even know that came off. Look at that. There's a little faceplate on there. Well, shoot, that makes taking it in and out a lot easier. I didn't even realize that. That just clips in. That's cool. So now I have the two screws that hold the, well, from my angle, the right side of the board down. There's one. There's two. And then I have this support bracket. And I want those nubs, if you will, to be facing up because that's where the VGA header is going to screw down to. But first we've got to secure this down, and we need the long screws for that. These are those long screws I was mentioning. And that's going to go right there. Just get that started for now. And then we'll start the other side. Get that aligned properly. It is going to push down on this ribbon cable. Tighten both sides down there. Don't over tighten them, you just make them snug. And then our VGA header is going to go into the hole in the case there. Just like that, and then we'll align the two holes for these really super teeny tiny little screws that are used to secure that VGA header so it doesn't move on you when you're trying to plug your monitor in. And once again, don't over tighten, just make them snug, and that's pretty much done. Now this front piece that popped off of here, we can put this back on. This just snaps in. Whoops. This just snaps in here. Helps to have it right side up. That's all there is to it.
Nice.
And of course, put the backpack on. Which way does this go? Does it go this way? Nope. Does it go this way? Or what happens if I turn it 180 degrees? There's a nice fit and finish there, I gotta say. What happens if we turn it the other way? I can't tell. It seems like it doesn't care. Well, I suppose if you were putting a 2.5-inch drive in here, the cables would be coming out this side, and they're going to plug in right here. So I imagine you'd want it this direction. And then we just put those 4 screws right back in. So you will notice there is some improper English on the back of this. Specifically, under the specifications, it's calling our solid state storage ROM. ROM would be like a DVD drive. Well, technically a DVD is a worm. It's a write once, read many. ROM is read-only memory, meaning you cannot save anything. That's an improper terminology for storage. And, well, this kind of storage anyway, because this is just a standard solid state drive. There's our CPU, the Core i7-10810U, input voltage, and then contact information for support located down below. Again, I can't speak for how good their support is. I haven't used it myself. So that's why, again, I would emphasize if you were going to buy one of these, I would probably get it from Amazon just for the peace of mind that you could return it if for any reason it doesn't meet your expectations. I think most people would be very, very happy to have this. And we have an extra one AceMagician sent us to give away. And if you'd like a chance to win that, well, let's give it away right now. You must be in the United States, and you must have not won anything from this channel before. We want to give folks who have not yet received anything their turn so that everybody can fairly have a turn. So how many of you out there would be interested in receiving one of these at no cost to you? I will pay for the shipping to get it to you. Now I'm just looking in the chat. Steve Mercure has already received something. So once again, if you've already received something from the channel, please step aside to allow somebody else who has not received anything to have an opportunity. Kevin Crowley says he would. Barry Klein and Tim Teal.
You're so sweet, Bill.
I have a ton of, what?
You're so sweet.
Sweet.
You're so sweet, yeah.
You must have me confused with somebody else. Patrick Manny says, I've got too many computers now. I know what that's like. Dave Price said there is a SATA data port on the board. Yes, there's also in the box, there is a SATA cable, because that's how you're going to connect the 2.5-inch drive, is you're going to use this cable that's included in the box. And this will plug into the motherboard, and this will plug into the motherboard, and this will plug into the back of your 2.5-inch hard drive or solid state drive. That's what that's for. In addition, you have the spare M.2 slot as well. But again, according to my testing, it does not appear to support NVMe. Now, I might be mistaken on this, but I could not get it to detect NVMe. And when I'm looking at the specs, nowhere in the specs does it specify that I can tell on this specific model whether it's SATA only. I don't see NVMe mentioned at all. And when I've gone in the BIOS and looked, I didn't see any options in the BIOS. Let me give Camera Girl a break here. We'll go to camera one because I'm just looking in the chat. I see a lot of activity. The chat room just came alive. You're good. Thank you. Yeah, so we're going to look for somebody who hasn't received something from us before. Lou Greenia says, I sent you $25 via PayPal to support the channel. Say hello to Mara as well. Well, thank you as always, Lou.
Thank you, Lou.
Dave Price says he likes the B-Link GTR 6. Yeah, if you wanted a mini PC for gaming, the GTR 6 is definitely worth considering to meet both the needs of a mini PC and moderate needs for gaming. Happy Panda says, do we need to be subscribed to your channel for this giveaway? You would have to be subscribed to even write your comment in the chat room. So if you're not subscribed, you can't participate in the chat. And if you can't participate in the chat, then you wouldn't be able to put yourself up for consideration. So I guess the answer to that is yes, apparently. There's our friend Oystein joining us. Always good to see Oystein. And Dave Price says, not high-end gaming. Oh, no, not on a mini PC. Well, I suppose you could get an external GPU and plug it in through the Thunderbolt port. I think the GTR 6 has a Thunderbolt port. But you'll spend more for that than the whole computer. But that's gaming. Marco says, I'm sorry, Carrie, but video off the camera from Camera Girl is way better. That's a little Sony camera, and its strength is in the close-ups. If I put that Sony camera here, the picture quality is nowhere near as good as this camera is. So for close-ups, that Sony camera is far superior. I did do a broadcast with it as the main camera, and it didn't go well because it's a little compact camera. It doesn't give me it doesn't fix the lens position. The battery doesn't last very long. It overheats. So it shines as the close-up camera. Agreed. The picture quality in it is very, very impressive when used in that way. I 100% agree with you. Luke Greenia says, as much as I would love this PC, I nominate Rick Lakes. Did Rick... Rick says this would be my first time getting something from you. I know I've offered Rick Lakes in the past, and he's always politely declined. So I'm sort of, I'm surprised he's putting his hat in the ring for this. Rick has been a good friend of the channel for a long time, generous contributor, and I think it should absolutely go to Rick Lakes. I agree. I've tried offering things to Rick in the past, and as I mentioned, he's always politely declined. So yeah, well, let's get this out to Rick Lakes. He's been a friend of the channel for a long time and well deserved. So congratulations to Rick Lakes. Now, if you're a member of my channel, do know that we do the members only Monday videos. And if you watch Monday's video, there's information in there for you regarding these mini PCs that you'll need to go back and watch Monday's video. What is the width of the PC? The specifications, length, width, and height are all listed there on the Amazon page.
It's teeny tiny and weighs nothing.
Teeny tiny and weighs nothing?
Yeah.
It is very light. It is surprisingly lightweight. Yeah, Amazon's got the specifications there on the page. Everybody's agreeing that I should send it to Rick Lakes. Well, Rick's got a lot of friends here, as he should. So Rick, do reach out to my email address. I'm assuming you know my email address. And then we can work out getting your shipping information so I can get this out to you. I'm just scrolling through some other comments here. Did I get a chance to ship the train PC? Unfortunately, there's a piece that I was worried about breaking in shipping that I broke. I'm still trying to figure out where I can find this piece, but it's a plastic piece that holds the two cars together, and it's a piece of plastic. There's three of them, one on the top, and then there's two at the bottom. And they're almost like the kind of piece that holds a cabinet closed. And I don't know why they made them out of plastic. That should have been at least reinforced with like a metal frame. And my concern was, how do I ship this thing all the way to Scotland without these pieces breaking off? Because there's no way to really separate the cars once it's hooked up. The wires are only so long. And I figured I'd take those pieces off before shipping it and then make a little video for Peter to show him you got to put these pieces on for the two cars to fit together. And I had taken a misstep, and the train PC was on the floor, and I had knocked it over. I didn't knock it over, I bumped it pretty hard. But because the two cars were connected, the plastic snapped in half, and I was like, oh no. So I have to figure out where I can get another one of those pieces. I think it came with spares, but I just don't know where I put them. Mats Olaf says, Carrie, send it to me, I'll fix it. Well, you know, Peter, our good friend Peter Laycock, he's worked with the train. There is a train in Scotland. I don't know if it's a commuter train or what kind of train it is, but he's worked there for 50 years. And so to send him a train-themed PC seems so appropriate. He wants to give it to his nephew. And initially, we've had some overheating problems with it, which I haven't gotten to resolve yet because this piece broke, and now I'm trying to figure out where to get this little piece from. I don't really want to glue it back together because it's going to look terrible. And then once I do figure all that out and resolve the cooling issue, I have to figure out how I can ship it where I'm reducing the opportunity for damage. Because like I said, there's 2 train cars and they're wired together once you build the computer. And those wires only give you about 3 inches of spare room. So basically some cushioning has to be put between the 2 train cars because we can't separate them the way I would like to. Like when you buy the train PC in the box it comes in, they're completely separate. So I can't even put it back into the original box. It won't fit once you've got them wired together. So that's a little bit tricky, and I haven't quite figured out yet how I'm going to get over these obstacles, but I will. But I appreciate you asking about that. I haven't forgotten about it. It is off to the side, and I'm just kind of considering the options and workarounds that I can implement to get this done at my level of correctness, right? It's got to be done right. It's going a long way, and he's waited a long time. And Sarge Tech has provided Rick Lakes my email address. Thank you for that. Yes. William Dawson says maybe you can 3D print it out of metal. I mean, I don't have that ability, but Martin wants to know if the parts need to be made from plastic or can they be made... Yeah, I don't know. I don't have the ability to fabricate. So my goal was to simply find the part online, maybe eBay, or maybe reach out to Lee & Lee and see if they can sell me the part. It's got to be out there somewhere. Sarge Tech says it's nice that the screws are not under the rubber feet on this. It's easy to open and upgrade the storage. Agreed. What shipping company do I use? I use Federal Express. Yeah, I found them to be the most reliable and the cheapest. John Paul Bacon has shared the item dimensions, the computer dimensions there in the chat room for the person that asked. Bob R says super glue. Yeah, that's the problem though. Super glue tends to work for a very short period of time in my experience. And then it just doesn't work anymore. Or at least here in the desert anyway. It seems like it doesn't stay fixed very long. So I am not a fan of super glue. Steve Mercure wants to know if the mini PC come with a whole cover for the case. You might choose to remove the VGA header. Once again, if you really want something that's that customizable, I'm sure if you want to spend somewhere around $800 to $1,200, you could absolutely have something like that. But what we're trying to do, or what AceMagician is trying to do here, seems pretty clear to me. And that is to make the computer as powerful, as reliable, and as inexpensive as they possibly can. So you're going to be very limited with options, like you cannot upgrade the RAM. It doesn't appear to support NVMe storage. You're not going to have much in the way of customization even under normal circumstances, this is restricted in order to bring that price point down to make it more affordable. And so you should adjust your expectations accordingly. Now, I don't know why, if you're not using this port, and I noticed looks like I've got the Wi-Fi wire caught underneath there. Just don't use it. It's off to the side. I can't imagine why anybody would care. That to me is just making trouble. You're opening up an opportunity to damage something. You're opening up an opportunity to lose either the cover or the VGA port itself. As if you're fickle and you keep changing your mind, every time you open it, you risk damaging it. Every time you put the parts away, you risk losing the parts. This isn't for that kind of a person. This is for somebody that's just simply going to buy it and use it. There should be nothing you need to do to this other than perhaps add more storage. That's it. That's all it's designed for. And in that way, you're getting a lot for your money, and that's how they're able to give you so much for so little. As I mentioned, I would encourage you to price these parts out if you were to build the machine yourself. Price out the cost of the CPU, the cooler, the motherboard, the RAM, the storage, the case, the power supply, and the Windows 11 Pro. And I'd be very curious just how much it would cost you to source those parts and to do all the work yourself to build it. But that would most certainly give you all the options with regards to customizing it in the future if your needs change. Yeah, that's the Wi-Fi wire that was rising up and in the way there. See, even just this, you see how I potentially introduced damage to this case. Just opening it up, you can accidentally pull one of the Wi-Fi wires off, and those are not easily replaced. Here, when I put this port on, I pinched the Wi-Fi wire, but thankfully I didn't pinch it enough to damage it. So you're just so much better off buying a machine that has the specs that you want and leave it alone, at least if you want it to be reliable, to last, and to not have any problems. You're statistically more likely going to have the computer for a far longer, trouble-free period of time if you stop fidgeting around with the insides of it. Now, some people enjoy that sort of thing as a hobby, but I'm the one who gets the calls from the people that are running in crisis because their computer won't turn on and their whole world is upside down and they need me over there as soon as possible, and they also don't have much money and they want to know what's it going to cost, and they're practically in tears. And when that's brought on voluntarily because they took something apart that didn't need to come apart and now they've created some stress in their life, then they're trying to invite me into their stress. I just think enthusiasts and folks that have the attitude of enthusiasts should continue to build their own machines. And for the rest of us, it's what you see is what you get. There's really nothing hidden or secretive that you can expose either a weakness or a performance improvement outside of a BIOS setting. So in the BIOS, for example, let me show you. There's different modes for the CPU to be in, and I've got it in its high performance mode. Out of the box, the default was, there's like a low, medium, and high, but that's not what they're called. I'm sort of paraphrasing here. And I put it in the high performance mode just to see if it would create any heat related problems. And it doesn't, so I don't understand why it didn't come that way out of the box. But I also didn't notice any difference in performance regardless. Let's see, so that's, I need the network cable. And I need the keyboard and mouse. Okay. So let me turn this on, and let's go over to my HDMI input right here. Here we go. So what I want to do, I'll just have this reboot into the BIOS. So we'll go to the control panel, we'll go to Windows Update. Wait, it's not Windows Update I want, is it? What happened to my troubleshooting section? Where did it go? Recovery. Advanced startup. And then I'm going to go to, oh, it's not even going to, oh, it literally restarted it. All right, so we're in the BIOS anyway. And you'll see it's a pretty old looking BIOS. It's not a graphical user interface. This is pretty old school. And there's not much here for you to change or control. So we go over to the advanced section. We can look under the CPU configuration. And you'll see there's nothing about NVMe anywhere in this BIOS. It certainly wouldn't be under the CPU section anyway, but go back. Power and performance. I believe it's here under CPU power management. I put it under turbo. So by default, it's on max non-turbo. Now, max battery doesn't make any sense because there's no option to run this on a battery. But I keep it on turbo performance. So do know that out of the box, I believe it's set at max non-turbo. And I don't know why. I keep it on turbo. It doesn't seem to make any difference with fan noise or any issues with temp. And yeah, all this other stuff I just leave at default settings. And then under GT Power Management, not sure what GT even is. Apparently something to do with the video, I'm guessing, but I'm not quite sure. I leave everything at default. And then we've got the information regarding the Ethernet adapter that does support Wake on LAN, but that's really something only businesses use. And you'll see the BIOS version, or rather the firmware version is several years old. This goes to 2017, but it is a brand new product. So we have quiet boot enabled. Again, I leave everything here disabled. Even as fast as it boots, we do not have fast boot turned on. So you can imagine it would boot even faster. We are in UEFI mode. Our boot priority is here. Yeah, there's absolutely nothing about NVMe in here. And that's it. So yeah, if I were to receive this computer, I would go here under Advanced, under Power and Performance, under CPU Power Management Control, and I would, as I have, change this to Turbo Performance from the default of non-turbo. Other than that, I leave everything else alone. There's really not much you can do in here. Again, it is a simplified machine in order to be at the price point and to avoid unnecessary support calls from people mucking up their PC and then needing to call support because they self-created an issue that, you know, they made a mistake. So this prevents those mistakes from happening by not allowing you to make those changes, which is pretty standard in OEM system builds like Dell and HP. They all do this to lower their support costs by shutting down a lot of the features. Oh, now it's giving me the, all right, that's fine. By shutting down a lot of the features that when you're building your own PC and you're buying your own motherboard, you're gonna have a lot of options. And that, for most people, is overwhelming. It's very technical. They feel very intimidated by it. So for people that buy pre-built machines, a lot of those options are removed because the manufacturer doesn't want that to be a temptation. They also don't want the user to feel overwhelmed. And so those options are simply disabled from user intervention, and that helps keep the machine reliable. It also helps keep support costs minimized as much as possible, so we can differentiate real support problems from user-created tutoring problems, which is a really, really big problem in the industry. All right, does anybody have any questions for me? We'll spend the last, whatever few minutes we've got left here addressing any questions either related to this computer or just technical questions in general. I'll do my best to provide an answer or direction to where you can find the answer, as well as other members in our community here in the chat will quite often offer you alternative answers as well, which in many cases are better than my answers, quite frankly. So if you have a question, do watch the chat room for answers, please. Starshine says, Mark Gaines found your part above and listed part number. Oh, really? It's a busy chat room today, so I'm crawling through it here. I've not seen it yet. Todd Wiggum says, can you hook up a printer? Yeah, well, most printers are USB these days. This has plenty of USB ports on it. And a lot of printers are also Wi-Fi capable. So you're just connecting the printer essentially to your router. And then any computer that's got internet access through your router, in theory, could print to the printer that way as well. So yes, absolutely, you can hook a printer to it, whether that's through your network or directly through a USB cable. Wintermute posts a link. Is this it? That looks like it. Oh, it's cheap too. $8.95 gets me 4 of them. I think that's it. Let me show that to the chat room. Yeah, I mean, it snapped it right in half. And I am so worried about these breaking. My thought was I think they just click in and click out, but I don't recall ever removing them before. Well, I'll have to definitely bookmark this page. See, the problem is I'm not sure on the length, and I can't tell from the picture if these are long enough, but I'm assuming that, and I don't need that, I need this piece. This piece here is fine, the receiving part, but I'd have to check the length. Well, they do have the lengths here as 10 millimeters wide, 26 millimeters in height. So I'd have to measure what I've got now, but I can't imagine they would have too many different lengths and widths of this connecting piece, because that would just complicate manufacturing. But you never know. So definitely something I'll have to look into. And thank you for bringing that to my attention. And I'll have to look for Mark Gaines' post. I still haven't seen it, but I appreciate that, because I haven't had any luck in finding it. Hey, there's our friend Mitch Morrison joining us in the chat room. Ron S. with a $20 super chat says, I'm Ron on Cave Creek Road. My BioStar had a setting for UEFI BIOS, and I did not know that. Made a big difference in problem install. I sure like your videos. Hey, it's great to have these experiences and to learn, right? when you're having an issue and you're able to resolve it on your own, those are the lessons you won't soon forget. Those lessons tend to be something we remember and carry forward when we're doing more work on computers in the future, something that's always in the back of our mind. Versus if you had a problem and somebody addressed it for you and then it's like, oh, what did they do? I can't remember. Those lessons don't typically have the stickiness that the School of Hard Knocks has. So good on you. Mitch Morrison brings in the dad joke of the day with, what do you call a herd of wealthy cows? The 2%. Wah, wah. Starting to feel like this is turning into laughing. Or hee-haw. Gonna poke our heads up from a hayfield. Did you ever get your other monitor hooked up? I have the portable monitor, and I was curious. I went back on Amazon to see just how big these portable monitors can be. And it turns out 17 inches is about the maximum. After that, you basically have a regular computer monitor you have to apply power to. But for the 17-inch monitor, it's my understanding that it's possible with a USB Type-C port that it can send a signal to the monitor as well as power the monitor, all with that one cable. And I'll be doing a review of that next week. Glenn's Music says, do you know that 1 out of every 2 people make up 50% of the entire population? That makes sense. The folks at AceMagician asked me if I would introduce you to a power strip adapter, and they sent me 3 of them, and they have said I can give these away to people. So we have another giveaway. So what are these? Well, let me go to my Amazon page that lists this product, and we can look at it together. So in these boxes, I have 3 of these, 1 in each box. This is a European travel plug adapter that has USB-C. It's a 4-foot, they say extension cord, but a 4-foot cord. And it's US to European international plug adapter with 3 outlets, 3 USB ports for Europe, Spain, France, Germany, Iceland, and Greece, meant to use when traveling. You can see they want $18.99 for it. There's a $3 coupon here that brings that down to $15.99. And there's some of the pictures of the product in use. Now, I have never really been outside of the USA. I've been to the Caribbean, I've been to Mexico, I've been to Canada, so I've never needed a power adapter myself. I am limited to shipping only within the USA. You see there is a 6-foot version, 6-foot cord version of this available for a few more dollars. And I think they sent me the 4-foot, I'm not sure. But the plug adapter included is for Europe on the ones that they've sent me here. Now this isn't something I normally review because I don't really have any way to test it. I'm not somebody who does a lot of traveling. I've never really been able to afford that, but they're like, look, while you're reviewing our CK10, would you mind showing this? And I'm, sure, I'll show it, but there's really not much I can say about it, and I don't know how many of you out there would have need for something like this, but here's what it looks like. This is a ZYC11. Does it say if it's the 4-foot or the 6-foot? Warning, this adapter does not convert voltage. Make sure the AC devices support dual voltage before using. You can get these voltage message from checking your device surface or label. Not quite sure what that means. Please check the power requirements of your appliances before use. The total power connected is not allowed to exceed 2,500 watts. Well, that's pretty much going to blow a circuit in most American homes anyway. We do not recommend using high wattage appliances with the surge protector power strip like induction cookers, microwave ovens, hair dryers. Those things should be plugged directly into the wall outlet, not into this. Don't use this in a wet environment, or don't touch this with wet hands. Non-professional people, please do not disassemble, alter, repair, or maintain this product. I just got done telling you all the reasons why. Leave it alone. Don't open it up. It doesn't tell me which length of cord this is. It doesn't. Oh, wait, we have an instruction manual here. I think it's pretty straightforward. Okay, well, if you're watching in the chat room right now as we're live, you can see this has the European plug on the end. There is no US plug except here on the device. So this is intended, let me bring it up a little closer. If you're somebody who travels and you would have use for this, you'll see that it's the European plug standard on this side. This plug does not come out. It's not changeable. And it adapts this European plug into the standard US plugs as well as your standard USB ports. And you have an on-off, ooh, that's a chunky switch with power light status. So they've given me 3 of these. We are authorized to give all 3 away. You must be in the United States. How many of you in the chat are interested in receiving one of these? Thing 1 in the chat says, Carrie, you mentioned getting your cables from one source on one of your videos. Can you repeat where you source your HDMI and other cables? I'm sourcing them from Amazon. Prior to that, I would go to a website, and this is what I think you're referring to, called Monoprice. Mono, M-O-N-O, Price, P-R-I-C-E. But now I just buy them from Amazon, and Monoprice is selling on Amazon, and I'm getting those super thin Ethernet cords of varying lengths, as well as super thin HDMI cables. And sometimes the seller on Amazon is Monoprice, but you can go straight to Monoprice and look there as well. Monoprice.com. Martin Wolford says, I wouldn't mind when I travel to Europe. All right, Martin, please send me an email. I hope you have my email address. Scott Hallinan said, I must book a hotel in the US so I can enter in your giveaways. Scott joins us all the way from, is it New Zealand, I think you're in, right? That's a long plane ride. Oystein says, it means 240 volts in Europe will be connected to the devices connected to it. Most adapters supporting both 110, 120 in the US and 220, 230 volts in Europe. Yeah, so I guess this is going to feed these American outlets with 240 volts. But since most of the stuff us Americans are buying is made in Asia anyway, they just build it one way with auto detecting the voltage, and they auto switch unless it's something really, really old. So they're telling you to just be careful to make sure that the device that you're plugging in with the American plug auto senses the voltage. So thank you for pointing that out, Oystein. That makes sense to me now. But most anything built within the last 15 years that plugs in should auto sense voltage. Remember back in the day, PC power supplies used to have a switch to go between 110 and 220 volts. And sometimes that switch would get moved and I'd get a support call. Somebody's computer wouldn't turn on. And it usually needed a flat blade screwdriver to move that recessed switch to the left or to the right. These days, power supplies auto-sense the voltage coming in, and there's nothing you need to do. Some people had some concern about sending the computer to Scotland, to our friend Peter Laycock out there, that he would have a voltage issue. But no, he'd just have to get a different cable or an adapter for the US plug that goes from the wall to the power supply. The power supply does the work from there. So there's no difference or customization that has to be done these days. Manufacturing is now done in a way that they don't have to manufacture products a specific way for voltages in different countries. Now the technology is, you can make it one way, one size fits all, and it auto senses. So that's pretty much all electronics that plug into the wall for well over the last decade. Scott says, would you send items outside of the US if I paid for it myself in terms of shipping? I generally avoid that because sometimes there's import fees and there's a lot of customs forms that all have to be filled out. It's not as simple as putting it in a box and shipping it. So it's a much more involved process. And for an item this inexpensive, you'd be so far better off just to pay for it locally and have it shipped than it would cost us both a lot more money to do that. It just doesn't make any sense unless what I've got here is, something handmade, custom, one-of-a-kind piece or something. These are cheap enough that buying it locally, I'm sure, would be faster and cheaper. Shipping internationally, at least from the United States, there's just a number of forms that have to get filled out. And if you don't dot every I and cross every T, it's a real hassle. In some cases, it costs more to ship something like this to somewhere like Australia or New Zealand than the thing costs to buy. So for example, I shipped a computer one time and I shipped it to Tasmania. And that was $1,400 shipping cost. It was the cheapest I could find for a regular mid-sized computer weighing about 40 pounds. And then when it arrived, there was an import tariff of $413 that had to be paid before they would release it to the customer. So our total cost of shipping that $2,000 computer was about $1,840, thereabouts. So I'm not doing that anymore. Thankfully, it arrived without damage. It arrived in perfect shape. But can you imagine if on top of that, once you pay all that money and you finally cut the tape and take it out of the box, that there's, that it's been handled roughly in shipping. But yeah, that was me having a lot of anxiety until I got a picture from the guy in Tasmania with a thumbs up next to his Nuka-Cola computer. I could breathe again. Yeah, that was the cheapest I could find. So there are shipping where you can put it on a pallet and you can ship a whole pallet. No, that was FedEx. And the FedEx folks weren't quite sure how to do it. And so I called FedEx and they were complaining to me about something on the customs form. And I said, well, that's how the FedEx employee filled it out. They said, well, if you're shipping internationally, you should take it to the FedEx distribution center directly, not to one of our partner stores. And I said, well, then why do you allow your partner stores to do it? Why do you allow them to offer that service if you're discouraging me from using that service? May I recommend that you reconsider what you just said or let me talk to a manager? It was so much stress to get that thing shipped, to figure out how to get it shipped, to get the forms filled out right, to not know what the import fees were going to be until it got there. The government, the customs department decides that. Nobody can predict what that's going to cost. And, unless I suppose you ship stuff all the time and you know what to expect. And then for FedEx to call me and essentially threaten to send the box back because they said, who's paying for the import fee? Is it being billed to the recipient or being billed to the sender? And I said, well, it's being billed to the recipient just like it says on the customs form. Because I went over that with the FedEx employee and I saw the FedEx employee make that selection. We specifically discussed that as he was filling out the form. What do you see on the form? So I was upset that I was being asked a question that was already answered on the form, and I didn't like the threat that they were going to send it back. It was very hostile. It was very aggressive. I'm like, no, I paid $1,400 and you will do your job. Because they're like, yeah, we'll send this back and you won't get a refund. What's with the hostility? Holy smokes. So once the recipient got it, I could breathe again. I do not want to go through that anxiety ever again. The good news is, even though I paid the cheapest shipping possible, which was FedEx Ground, it got there in 4 days.
Wow.
I couldn't believe it. I was not expecting it to. I thought it's going to be a couple weeks, 2-3 weeks. 4 days it was there. Crazy.
Yeah, $4,000.
Well, 1,400.
Yeah, just for shipping. But
1,400 plus 400 and something for the import fee. And the computer itself was, I think, around 2,000.
$4,000.
But the guy in Australia there in Tasmania said that he had a budget of 5,000. So we still came in under budget. But it took almost 6 months to get that shipping figured out. Because remember, I have a bunch of other projects I'm working on. So it's not like I could just monopolize a week of time to keep. I even had a viewer that did international shipping say, reach out to my company. We do that. And I reached out to his company and they said, we don't do that for individuals. We do that for companies. So if you've got a boatload of stuff you're shipping, that's what we do. We don't deal with consumers at all. And I'm like, how can the guy who works for the company, who's telling me to use his company, then that's what they do, he himself didn't know. Yeah, I don't want to go through that anymore. Paul says you could cut this plug off and you could solder on an American plug and use this. That's true, but you could also just buy an adapter and you could save yourself a lot of work. You can just go on Amazon and just buy a European to USA plug adapter. I mean, you don't have to physically cut into anything. It's high voltage. I don't recommend you do that. He says, I'm sure he was thankful that I paid the fee. No, he paid the fee, the recipient. It was all agreed upon that when it arrived, it was going to be assessed a fee, and we didn't know what it was going to be. And I asked him, are you going to be okay paying that? This was all discussed before I even agreed to build the computer for him, because I said this is an unknown variable that can only be determined once it's in your port, in your country. Your government does that. I have no control over that. And he said, yeah, no problem. I'll cover all the shipping costs. If it's damaged, I'll take responsibility. He really, really wanted to order a computer for me. And I said, I don't do it. And he's like, what if I can alleviate all your concerns and accept all responsibility and absorb all costs? Even if it arrives in pieces, I'm okay with it. Would you do it then? And I thought, just to have the experience, I will. And then after I did it, I'm like, I'm never doing that again. Way too stressful. Garfield says, Carrie, imagine having stress and epilepsy and you have my life. Not fun. Yeah, well, we all have our challenges. Some are more hidden than others, but I assure you, everybody has, let's call it issues. It's just some folks' issues are a bit more obvious than others.
Everybody has features.
There's mental challenges, physical challenges for some of us, sometimes a combination of both, but you weren't born in Disneyland. Life is tough. And hopefully throughout it, we have moments of extreme happiness. Of course, we have challenges, obstacles, frustrations. It's all the beauty of it all combined. And you just get you're dealt the cards you're dealt, deal with it. Because what choice do you have, right? So you're not alone. We all have our struggles. Greg M says, Canadians have to go through this when we ship something back to the USA for warranty repairs. Yeah, well, with the Xenos PC shipping back and forth to Canada, in this case, we were just sending metal components back and forth. But when you're dealing with electronics, things get a little bit trickier. Mad Malik says, my favorite saying growing up is, life is tough, wear a helmet. So we have one person said they were interested in one of these. I still have two others. Was anybody else interested in the USA that wants one of these power adapters, travel power adapters with the European style plug on it? I'm picking people only during the live video, and once we're done being live today on YouTube, no other opportunities will exist for receiving one of these beyond what I'm offering in this moment. All right, apart from anybody else that's interested in, there's two other of these power adapters available to give away. Speak now or forever hold your peace. Also, if you have any questions for me, any computer or tech related questions, I'll be happy to address them, and we'll probably wrap this up here in the next 5 minutes or so. So thanks you guys for hanging out with me today, and thanks to everybody who has contributed via Super Chat during today's live broadcast. I want to go back through those because I think I missed a few of them. Winston Liu had contributed $2 Canadian. Ron S. with a $20 Super Chat. Ryan with a $2 Canadian. There's Alan Lindas with $7.77, who's telling me to turn my microphone back on. Oh, that was back during my little audio snafu. And Ryan again with $2 Canadian. Version Kalustian with $2. Planet Cryos with a $20 Super Chat contribution. And Ryan again with another $2 Canadian. Nick Poverman with a $5 contribution. Thomas Robinson contributed £3. Our good friend Buster, Peter Lickhawk with a £10 Super Chat contribution. Mark Gaines, watching us in England, contributes £10 in Super Chat. And Russell Starr has now been a member of our tech club for 9 months, as has Find Me in Hawaii and Zdravko Frankovic. So thanks, guys, for supporting the channel. Thank you to Luke Greenia for his PayPal contribution. I'll check the phone here real quick just to see if I'm missing anything. David Everett contributes a $20 Amazon gift card. Thank you, David. Yeah, I think that catches me up. This is the Galaxy S23, so pretty much the same as the S22 in a lot of ways. It feels a little bit lighter. It feels a little more squared off. I'm still familiarizing myself with it, but for the most part, it's almost imperceptibly different from my S22. I'm very eager to start taking some pictures with it to see how the camera is on this. The real high-end camera is on the S23 Ultra, but with each generation of smartphone, the cameras just keep getting better and better. And I'm finding myself taking a lot more pictures with my phone now than I ever have before. Just happen to be out somewhere and catch something, or even just sometimes as a reminder to myself. Even when I'm at a restaurant, I will, if I didn't bring my reading glasses, I'll take a picture of the menu with my phone and then amplify it on the phone so I can read it, so I can see it. So, you know, in a dimly lit restaurant, and sometimes the menus are pretty sizable, having the camera able to have a wide enough lens that I don't have to be 6 feet away from it to get it all to fit in the frame. The S22 was really good at that, and I expect the S23 to be even better. Sarge Tech extends his membership now for 2 months. He says, any time spent with Carrie is time well spent. Thank you for all that you do, plus the community of great people to associate with. Well said, and thank you, Sarge Tech. Luke Greenia says, what is going to be the fate of the demo unit? So usually I end up reviewing these as a follow-up review. I don't normally just review something and then immediately get rid of it unless I have 2 of them. I also like to do some short review shoppable videos for Amazon at a later date. And sometimes the companies reach out to me with a BIOS update or another change. They like they did, B-Link, I think, sent me a BIOS update for the GTR 6, was it? That was to quiet the fan down BIOS update. If I had given that out, I wouldn't have been able to follow up with that. So usually these units are held onto for a few months for a couple of reasons. One is the opportunity to make some review videos specifically for Amazon. That's their primary. Secondly, would be to revisit them in the future. So that's typically why, you know, something would have to be here for about 6 months at the earliest, where at that point, if I don't have any plans with it, it's just getting in my way and I want to get rid of it. So that's what usually ends up happening with items like this that I review. Mark Gaines says, Carrie, can you check Super Chat? Ah, yes, Mark Gaines had contributed 10 pounds. He said, Carrie, I don't know how to add links, so here it is. coolerguys.com, part number JT03. Mark, you should be able to copy and paste links in the chat because you are a blue member. A simple copy and paste should work, but I appreciate that information so that I can Google that and pull that up. Todd Wickham says, thanks, Carrie. I always learn from you. Sorry I can't catch every Friday. Well, we're glad to have you here at all. I'm glad that you show up when you can. Certainly understandable that people have lives. I don't expect you to put yours on pause to join us here, but when you're available to join us, we're always happy to have you here. It's good to see you. Virtually, anyway. And yeah, thanks again, Mark. I appreciate that. Thing One wants to know if I have a favorite vendor for HDMI or other cables that I use. Again, I just mostly buy everything from Amazon now. So all of my cables lately, both Ethernet and HDMI cables and USB cables, whatever kind of cables I need, I will generally purchase from Amazon. And I do that for a couple of reasons. One, I like how fast the shipping is with Amazon Prime qualified product. I also like the generous return policies that Amazon has. I like the pricing. I like the inventory choices between the types of cables, the length of cables, the thickness of the cables. And a lot of you will contribute via Amazon gift cards. And so by using that money designated for the channel, I always need the cables for the channel anyway. So it just kind of completes that all full circle for me. I try to make most of my purchases for pretty much anything at Amazon for that reason. For all of those reasons. Brian Larson with a $2 Super Chat contribution says, hello, I'm really enjoying the B-Link i5 that I bought. That's great to hear. Glad you're happy with it. And thank you for your contribution as well. Mark Gaines says, you're welcome, Carrie. I hope it's the right thing. Yeah, I will definitely look into that. Dustin Fuller says, Carrie, check your PayPal. Okay. Dustin Fuller sent $10 via PayPal. Right on. Thanks for supporting the channel that way. I appreciate that. Starshine says, thanks, Carrie. I always learn a lot here, and other subscribers are a great bunch. Agreed. It's an amazing community we have here. Thank you for being a part of it. Scott Hallinan says, Carrie, did you get your Orbi router? I think I recall you said you were going to get one. No, I'm not. They're ugly. Those things they're huge and they're ugly. I've gone back to my original RAX120 Netgear Nighthawk router here at Studio B. I sent back all those 6E routers. They were just massively overpriced in my opinion and offered me no benefit whatsoever. And I had a couple of other Netgear routers that I was hoping to demonstrate the mesh system and how Netgear has their mesh system, but Netgear doesn't offer that on their routers. They have mesh routers or Wi-Fi routers. None of their Wi-Fi routers that are non-mesh support a mesh option, which is not true with ASUS and TP-Link. They both have that option on many of their Wi-Fi routers to work as mesh. I fully expected Netgear to have that. Netgear does not offer that at all. So those routers all went back to Amazon, even returned at what a great price they were. The whole point of me having them was to demonstrate how to implement the mesh function of the routers. And I was just shocked that I assumed Netgear would offer that the same as their competitors, and Netgear does not. That saddens me. Also, that expensive TP-Link 6E router, the big square one, was supposed to support through a firmware update Easy Mesh. Is it Easy Mesh or One Mesh? Anyway, I had that router for close to 6 weeks. There was a firmware update, but still had not yet been implemented by TP-Link for that feature. So therefore, the date was closing in on the return period. I sent it back. It was way too much money to be told that feature will be added at some point in the future with no commitment as to when to expect it. So had no use for it. Jason Wyrick says he loves his Nighthawk mesh. Yes, Netgear makes mesh systems, but they don't have the option of converting a Wi-Fi Netgear router into a Wi-Fi mesh router the way ASUS and TP-Link do for many of their Wi-Fi routers, which it adds functionality that you can grow with the router as your needs change. I'm very disappointed that Netgear is playing by their own rules and they're not even participating by offering that feature in their routers. Saddens me. I'm shocked. Tim Too Much says he's been using the Eero Pro Mesh Wi-Fi 6 for a year and he loves it more than any other setup he's had. In general, if you've had range issues, mesh permanently solves them in a way that a regular Wi-Fi router simply never will, likely never will. So I'm very happy with any manufacturer of mesh router, whether it's TP-Link, Eero, they all, Asus, Netgear, with the Netgear mesh systems, I've not really had a complaint with any of them. All right, guys, I think that's going to wrap it up for today's video. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. My thanks go to the folks at AceMagician for sending us not only a unit to review, but a unit to give away. Congratulations to Rick Lakes for receiving the CK10 from the folks at AceMagician. And of course, we have 3 of these European power adapters to give away. I know there's one person, Martin in the chat, said he wanted to receive one. There still are 2 others. For those of you that want to reach out, it'll be a first come, first serve to my email address. US, you must be a resident of the United States. I'm not shipping them outside of the US. And I thank all of you for hanging out with me today and for this amazing community that we have. Thanks also to Camera Girl for all the close-ups and for all the contributions that have come in Super Chat and PayPal. Thanks you guys for helping support the channel so I can remain independent and do honest reviews that aren't tilted or slanted to parrot out a manufacturer's script. I personally don't have a problem with people who do that. I just don't want to do that. And that means I have to buy the product, or I have to make arrangements to have a company send me product under the condition that I'm free to review it the way I want to review it and say what I want to say. A lot of companies are not okay with that. What a shock, they're paying for something. They absolutely want to control what they're paying for. I understand their perspective. So by just going out and buying the product myself, I'm not under any obligation or any awkwardness. And of course, having the participation of manufacturers like AceMagician, allowing me to do the reviews my way and be honest about it is very much appreciated. So that's going to wrap it up for me for today. I hope everybody has a happy, safe weekend this weekend. Monday will be the members only video at 1 o'clock Phoenix time as usual. And coming up next week, I think I have yet another mini PC to review. And to the folks who have won, I'll look forward to hearing from you in email so we can arrange the information that I need to get the item shipped out to you. That's going to wrap it up for me for today. And until next time, bye for now.